So you're basically signing up to live in the inner city with no prospects of income.
Right.
And then, now you're pregnant with our first grandkid. How committed are you guys really to doing this?
Wow.
I remember my mom calling me and saying, I'm just going to tell you how it is. This better be a God idea because it's definitely not a good idea. I think in the nonprofit world, the ones who really do well are the leaders who are the most scrappy.
Public Works gets a call and they ended up coming out because somebody was like, oh, there's these white people dumping in the alley.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
So they show up and it was really funny because they're like, who are you and what are you doing? And he's like, I live here.
Hey everybody, John Henry with The Good Hustle. This is episode 19 brought to you by Topo Chico. Just kidding.
Someday we'll get sponsored.
Someday. Come on, guys. I'm John Henry.
Zach Williamson.
So thank you for coming out. But before we get started, we are funded, and this podcast is only possible because of our real estate career. So if you know anybody that's looking to buy, sell, or invest, please give myself or Zach a call. Our numbers should be below, Ben. So we'll see how that goes. But today is a really special day.
It's going to be awesome.
It is.
I'm very excited about this episode.
We are joined by a nonprofit power couple.
Ooh.
Amen.
Have you been called that before?
Zing. Never.
Do you feel like you're a nonprofit power couple?
Well, I guess we'll find out.
So it's Cristina and Tannon Hermon, and they're founder of Colina Coffee and Love the Hill, which is actually Wildheart, which is your nonprofit.
Yep.
So they're doing a lot of amazing things for our local community. Mm-hmm. And this is a podcast that just isn't about local community. That's what we focus on. But when we can get people like yourselves that are doing these things that people that maybe live right around the corner don't know, or people that live in Carlisle don't know. I didn't know about you guys until recently. I've heard things like Love the Hill before, but I didn't really know. But to start literally doing a deep dive and doing some research on what you guys do and connecting the dots with people that we know has been really, really cool to see, because when it comes to community and hope and sharing, you guys are the epitome of that. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you guys are doing phenomenal stuff. And we'll talk later about how I knew you guys before this. But I guess, can you guys give us a little intro on who you guys are and how you ended up meeting in the first place?
Well, how we met, that's a whole other story. So
Sure.
I'll give
we
us
want
a brief
all of them.
podcast.
We want all the stories.
Giving us all the stories. well, we'll start with how we met. So I'm actually a college dropout. I was at Oklahoma State University.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm changing the world. So there's hope for everybody out there. Right?
Amen.
Listen, I went to 4 colleges, a couple associate's degrees, nothing major, and I'm doing okay. So
I also I dropped out of college in the beginning, but then I got my degree later.
Guys, if we combine our credits,
I know, right?
we could be one.
I actually have a degree.
Yeah.
So if we combine our credits, we are Cristina.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. She's also overachiever, graduated in 3 years. So
sounds like her.
she's the extra credit type of student. But
You could have helped us all out.
I actually just finished my first year of college at Oklahoma State University, where I met her. We had a mutual friend who invited her to come on a missions trip that we were on as our translator. So she's also bilingual. And of course, like any, small town vanilla white guy, I was smitten by the girl and throwing Spanish out like it was no problem. And I was,
Makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah, I was.
She could give you insults and you wouldn't care.
Oh yeah,
sounds good.
I was starstruck, and she was totally not interested. But persistence is key. That's my advice for everybody listening today. If you want something, just stay after.
Hey, hold on. That's our last question. Your best piece of advice. So hold off on that.
But yeah, I don't know if your version of how that all came together.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we met on a mission trip, really had similar hearts, and I really wasn't interested in him because he's graduated the same year as my sister, so I'm actually older than him. Surprise.
Oh, okay.
Nobody really believes that.
No.
I wouldn't have been.
I have that
Still to this day, she
Yeah.
gets carded everywhere we go. This is a fun side because you want all the stories. You ready?
Yeah.
She was pregnant with our second or our first?
I don't know where you're starting.
The Costco story.
Oh, yeah, first.
Our first.
I was 28.
So she's pregnant with our first child. She's in Costco with her sister. They go up to get a sample, and the lady doing the sample says, excuse me, your mom needs to know, like, that you're here. You can't just take a sample if you're a minor. And she's like, I'm funny. Like 20 weeks pregnant with my first
And you
child.
were 28 years old?
28 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
Yeah, because you're
honestly,
62 now. The camera would never know it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
She found the fountain of youth, and I struck gold whenever I married her. So I tell her, I pray for her all the time. Like, I'm going to be like this old decrepit guy falling apart when I'm in my 80s, and she's going to look like she's 30. So, you know.
Well, I have a fiance, Taylor, and she is like 6.5 years older than me, and everybody thinks she's younger, and it's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Like, she looks way better than I do. It's pretty impressive.
Doesn't take much on them.
I know.
Life affects us all differently.
100%, yes. I always say, well, listen, I used to do a lot of drugs, so that's my problem. So, but anyway, keep going, guys.
Yeah, so I mean, we met in Mexico, and then she actually was graduating. Well, you share kind of how we ended up actually getting together.
Yeah, so I was actually going to go to medical school and graduated 3 years college. My parents I think told you that they're both doctors. So
Yes, he did.
Kind of grew up in that environment. I always felt called to do like medical missions, and that was kind of my I want to do missions, but like this is the logical way. So long story short, I ended up feeling like that's not what I was supposed to do. End up going to Oklahoma to do a ministry school, and that's like where he was and the community that we went on this mission trip was, and that's kind of where we started. The short version is we ended up moving out here to work with another nonprofit, another ministry. 2 years into that, they ended up moving on, and that's like really when we found it.
That's what I heard. It was kind of like, now what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was that when like you're here for 2 years, really a place you don't know? I mean, originally, where did you grow up?
So I moved around my whole life.
That's
so
what you
like
said,
about
yes.
5 years in Michigan, California, Virginia.
Oh, wow. So you like really moved around. It wasn't just like in one state. It was like
Couple
everywhere.
Years in Georgia.
And a lot of people would think it's military, but it's because of your parents and residency type stuff.
Yeah, just different job situations happened that like caused us to move, and so yeah, not the typical like parents or doctors story.
Can I ask a question about that? Like, my mom was a military kid, and it was really difficult for her because you're making friends and then leaving, making friends and leaving. How was that for you? And like, is that kind of where a lot of your faith started?
I mean, yeah, for me, like, I actually enjoyed the change. It was like, oh, it's a new exciting chapter because that was kind of like the pattern. So actually, as I got older, it actually was like something God like intentionally had to deal with in my own heart of like, I felt that like, okay, I've been here a couple of years, I need to move on. And so when I moved to Oklahoma, it was definitely not like my cup of tea of like where I live. Like I was just how am I here? Like the people are great, but like this is just not my culture.
Right.
And the Lord really like used that to really deal with my heart, because then fast forward, we ended up moving. Right before we moved to Pennsylvania, I finally was like, okay, I'm content being here if like this is where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
And then we move here, and of course, like doing what we're doing, if I didn't have that like sense of like, okay, I'm going to be like committed and grounded to a place, like we would never be able to be
Right.
doing what we're doing, going through the stuff we did to like get to this place, and just like that sense of like, okay, I'm committed here. Like, and Tannon is a very like faithful person, so I kind of like,
That's adorable.
Good quality in a husband. I'll
If he
throw
wasn't
that
here,
out.
like if it was up to me, sometimes I probably would have like exited the picture. But it is like that thing inside me. God did something in my own heart to be like, okay, I can be here, and that's why like I've been in Pennsylvania the longest of all the places.
Right.
So I really do feel like this is my home.
And it's fun to watch, the paths that are created for us, and for us to actually, like we've talked about this how many times about, following doors that are open for us, like actually walking through them, because there's a lot of people that a door will open up and they won't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, and a lot of people assume that like successful people, they like always had a kind of linear, easy path that always made sense, and a lot of the time it is just kind of falling into the cards you're presented and playing them correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I ask you an additional question? Quick. Were your parents believers too?
Yes.
Okay, because I always find it fascinating. A lot of people assume that when people are ultra smart or in the medical field or STEM or whatever, they're not going to be into faith-based stuff. So it's interesting to me that you guys were.
To that point, it was a struggle for them to embrace what we were doing, and it wasn't because they had a conflict in the faith piece. It's just like there's the responsibility, logical side that says like, so you're basically signing up to live in the inner city with no prospects of income.
Right.
Like, and then, now you're pregnant with our first grandkid. Like, how committed are you guys really to doing this? And I remember actually when we first moved in, actually the weekend that we moved into the mansion, which we'll talk about later, there was a person killed right in front of the house. And then the following weekend, a person killed right behind the house. And, like Harrisburg in our area, it's not uncommon for it to be in the news. So, like, that's just like, oh, yeah, another thing happened in Harrisburg. But, like, because of that particular time in the city, it went on national news. And so my parents saw it. Wow. And I remember my mom calling me and saying, like, hey, like, I'm just going to tell you how it is. Like, this better be a God idea because it's definitely not a good idea. And then, like, you can imagine as we're starting to have grandkids.
Look at that.
Both sides of the family, like, you guys should really like figure this out because I don't know how I feel about this. But now, like, they're all 100% behind everything that we're doing, just rallied behind us. And I think they see.
And at the time, like, it was like, what,
25th most dangerous city in the United States.
Yeah,
when
Harrisburg.
We moved here in 2013.
Like that. Now it's like not even on the list.
No, it's actually the growth.
Like,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the growth of the city has been amazing.
Oh, yeah. Well, just last year in the U.S. News and World Report, we were ranked #1 place to live in Pennsylvania.
I know.
That's awesome.
I mean,
like
that's
kind of
dramatic.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah. That's wild.
So, yeah, like, it's definitely been a journey. But obviously when we landed there, like, we showed up to work with this other organization, this other ministry, and doing, like, a lot of, the house, like, it's like, we kind of described it to you a little bit, but like this massive house, and we hosted like different kind of discipleship training schools for young adults in their faith. And we did some like block parties and kind of connected a little bit with the community, but that really wasn't our focus. And so when that like ministry kind of like moved on, we really felt like we needed to invest into the community and actually see transformation happen. And that's really when we started Wildheart and the work we're doing now.
Yeah. So you guys did 2 years with this other thing, and then what happened after that from then to Wildheart? So when did Wildheart start?
Yeah, so Wildheart officially began 2016. So there was like a period of time, is like almost like a limbo season where, what would you say, about a year and a half, where we weren't actively really doing any ministry, if you will. So what we just kind of did, and praise God that we like had the patience, is like when we looked outside in the community, we could see there's just need everywhere. There's 1,000 things that you can do in a situation like that. And instead of just getting busy doing something good, we just made a choice as a team. Like, we're just going to spend time praying for the community and then just talking to neighbors, asking them, like, you tell us your version of the story and what's going on. And through both of those avenues, we really felt like that's where we kind of pushed into this area of like the best way that we can really serve the community is to start cleaning up trash around the neighborhood.
I saw videos of this that you guys did. Like, it's amazing. I saw videos of you guys cleaning up trash, tons of that. And then I saw videos of like
tons.
picnics that you guys are having in community and cookouts and like some really cool stuff where it's just like stuff you wouldn't see there 15 years ago. Yeah. And I'm looking at these videos and I'm like, wow, that is power. That's impact.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
And also our whole story, everything that like how we started and also how we continued to grow kind of centers around what you saw in that video of those parties. Like, we just get neighbors together at our house and it just becomes like a giant family dialogue. Like, what's going on? How can we help? Where are the needs? And what, like, if it's not going to be us, who do we connect people to? I mean, like, our mission statement, this whole idea of building bridges to transform communities, I think for us is kind of like, instead of taking on this burden of like, we got to solve everything, it's like, no. My role, my solution is just to make as many connections as possible because like what you were saying earlier, a lot of people have no idea what even happens over there in the hill, and if they do know anything, they probably just know about whatever the news shares, which is probably never going to be a good part of the story. So
exactly,
we feel like that's kind of been the greatest way that we can serve our neighbors is by just telling the truth about what's going on and helping people understand how they can help.
Yeah. And with the news, what's that saying that he said?
Oh, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah,
that's what Tom Russell said on our show.
Yeah, that's what the news covers. They're not going to cover typically what you guys do.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And this is a good time to mention too. This is how we know each other too, is through some of the Love the Hill cleaning up trash missions you guys were doing. our church ended up helping out at one of those. And I kept telling our church, like, we got to go back because it was the one time our church has ever been on the news. Was whenever we linked up with you guys. And I was like, that is so cool. Like even just for the fact that like we got to do something good and just be helpful in some regard in the community. Like that was such an awesome opportunity. And it was so cool to meet you guys there. And I got to see kind of firsthand like the connections and the things you guys were doing there. And I loved your example of like, sometimes I just need to connect people to the right people.
Yep.
And one thing I've heard on the show a couple times now is like a lot of the time you don't need a how, but you need a who. And that can be a huge thing that we do in real estate too. Like I don't know how to make a real estate sign, but I know someone who does, you know what I mean? And we end up needing those all the time. So that's just really cool.
No, that's true. I think in the nonprofit world, like the ones who really do well are the leaders who are the most scrappy, where it's just like, it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing in the world, but like we need to make a connection with the person who can help us move in the right direction. And so you just develop relationships over time, and you start finding out like the capacity that you can create through relationship is just insane. I mean, up until this point now, since we started Wildheart, we've had like 11,000 volunteers come through our house to serve.
What?
That's insane.
That's what I was going to ask.
I'm not trying to jump ahead on the script or anything, but I'm like 11,000 people. Like I look at that just like knowing what life was like in our community when I got there, and I was like, the idea that you can even get that many people to come to our neighborhood, that is asinine on its own. Like, it's just like, wait, what?
And to put that in perspective, 11,000 people is 20% of the population of the city. It's literally 20%.
That's like the entire Giant Center. It's like 11,000 people. Yeah.
Oh no, 11,000. Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And like I keep using the word impactful, but that's impactful. Like,
it is.
My word of the year originally was routine because I don't have good routines. I have routines. They're not good ones. So
that's what we discovered. You have consistently bad routines.
Consistently bad morning routines. That's why I'm 4 minutes late. So, but impactful, I changed my word after like, I don't know, like the 8th episode. I was like, my gosh, that's the only thing I keep hearing. It's like that word impactful. So, well, I think you got some questions.
Yeah, no. So I guess, timeline wise, so you guys came here for a couple years to help out, and then you end up starting Wildheart, right?
Yeah.
And so when does Wildheart turn into these other ventures with you guys with like Colina and I guess Love the Hill and all this stuff you guys are doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, we started Wildheart, and then like really almost immediately it was when we began like our what we call Love the Hill cleanup projects. And Love the Hill was really just like kind of our staple of like anything we're doing in the community. Like people in the Hill know us as like, you're the Love the Hill people.
Right. That's what I know.
It's also painted on the side of a building in our yard.
Yeah.
Right. And on your hoodie,
we have signs up like throughout the community where it's like, in this house we love the Hill, and it's like just this staple of like no drugs, no dumping, no trash, like kind of like people jumping into like
signing up to be part of this like movement of like we're going to actually start to take care of the community.
And so almost immediately we like jumped into the cleanup projects, and really it was just like, hey, like there's these abandoned houses like right behind in our alley, and they were just like filled with trash and dump materials. And it's like every time I go out in the community, it's like, that looks really bad. Oh, somebody should do something about it. Why isn't anybody doing anything? Like those are all my thought processes.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, you should do something. Like you should be the solution. And so we just were like, okay, we're going to take 3 weeks. We didn't have anything on our schedule, and we had people kind of coming that we could work with. And so we just started like pulling out the trash, and we're like, oh, we're just going to load it up in our trailer and take it to the incinerator. And having about like $400 literally.
Yeah.
Public Works gets a call, and they ended up coming out because somebody was like, oh, there's these white people dumping in the alley.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
So they show up, and it was like really funny because they're like, who are you and what are you doing? And he's like, I live here.
So we're in the alley behind our house. I'm like, my name's Tannon. I live right there. Like, how come we've never heard of you? I was like, who are you? I don't know who you are either. You know?
So on that note, can you tell us a little bit about like what some of the early big challenges you guys faced were? Because I'm sure, like outside of just being the white people dumping stuff in the alley or whatever, like I'm sure there was a lot of things you guys faced that became huge building blocks for you.
Yeah, I mean, we don't talk about some of the obstacles we faced at the very beginning often because it's changed so dramatically out of the context of relationships. So like when we moved in, nobody knew who we were. You know, in fact, the running joke, one of the ladies that we work with a lot in the community now, she used to joke around I guess it wasn't a joke to her at the beginning. She actually had real legitimate concerns that we were a cult because she saw all these young people living in this big house. And it's a gated property. And she's like, I never saw you guys outside. And anytime I did walk by your house, she was hearing us like doing worship, but she was calling it chanting. So she was like legitimately terrified that like some cult just occupied this like property in the middle of a neighborhood.
That is kind of creepy when you think about it.
No, it is. I'm like, I listen to her and I laugh. I'm like, surely, like that totally makes sense. Like honestly, like, but again, the reason why there was a lot of misunderstandings about who we were was we didn't know anybody. There was like no connection to the community. Like when we were working with our friend in this other ministry, all of our time and effort was geared towards communities in other third world countries. So that was like the dichotomy we experienced when we landed here. Is like we don't really know anyone outside, but basically it's the same exact conditions of the people that we work with every day.
Right.
So at the beginning we had people like the day that we moved into the house. I got out of my car, went upstairs. By the time I came back down, somebody had already gotten into my car, stole my phone. I mean, like, we're talking within minutes. I mean, I told you about some of the murders that happened when we first moved in. We had people break into the house a couple times. We've had all of my tools stolen multiple times. But we had a bunch of kids go through, smash every windshield of every car in the parking lot. I mean, we went through a lot, but almost all of those experiences were within the first 2 years. And all of that was when we were working with our friend. It's like we were never in the community. And then as soon as we started to engage in the community, just having like kids come over and hang out in the yard after school, we start walking around, get to know the neighbors. It's like almost overnight, all that stuff stopped.
And that has to be like, hey, the word gets around. It's like, hey, listen, don't touch that house.
Yeah.
Like they're doing good things.
Yeah, especially after we did that very first cleanup the summer of 2017. That was like a huge shift. Like it was kind of like people were like, hey, they're not weird, leave them alone. And then it became like, oh, hey, like these guys are actually really incredible. Like what can we do to protect them? And Cristina has some funny stories too of like she's taken teams in and like cleaned up drug dealers' backyards so that their kids have a place to play. And then them offering, their services to her. Like somebody gives you a hard time, like give us a call. She's like, probably not, but I appreciate that.
It's in the Rolodex, but we're going to just keep it there.
Yeah. And by the way, guys, if you're enjoying this episode of the Good Hustle podcast, please go ahead, leave a like, subscribe on the YouTube. And also, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts now. So if you want to listen without the video part, you can do that.
Yep. And if you're looking for any real estate needs, whether you're buying, selling, or investing, please contact Zach or myself. Our numbers are below. Back to the podcast.
Yeah, and ultimately, like when we started cleaning up, it was just something like very simple that we kind of stumbled in. Like, hey, this is actually the strategic like move to like unlock this community and like really connect to them in a practical way. Because even when we were working that first summer, they were kind of like, oh, what's the point? Like the hopelessness of like it's just going to go back to the way it was, like. And then when we got to the bottom of this one lot that was like just piled high with trash for like 15 years, they were like, wait a second, like if you guys can do that, like what can we not do? And it began this like inspiration of really just like giving people hope again that like, hey, we actually care about you. Like, and they would be like, so why do you care? Like, you're not like the other groups, like they just kind of come in and like do this little litter cleanup. Like, and then when they find out we lived
and they're plastered
there,
all over the news, making themselves look really cool. Like we didn't have any of that at the beginning.
Yeah. And like they were just like, so why are you doing this? Because nobody wants to clean that dump pile up. Like it's been there for 15 years. Like the city's not doing anything. And like meanwhile, obviously the cool story is like they came in to like be like, what are you doing? And then they end up helping us.
Yeah.
And like, hey, this amazing partnership was formed where we're able to like come along the city where. Instead of just like pointing the finger, it's like, hey, we want to help you get to a place where like you're stable. And the amazing thing is fast forward where we are today is they're doing amazing things. Because we came alongside in that really practical way, they're able to stay on top of things now that they were never before.
City works.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
like in such an amazing place.
They were drowning in responsibility. They could barely even do their own job for the city. And the way that we served them allowed them to kind of catch up and then increase capacity. Now they're actually doing the trash service for all the surrounding municipalities. So
this isn't like, can
crazy.
you imagine just two people and a door opens up and you just driving around and what?
It's
like,
crazy.
think about what that has turned into from 2016 or whatever date you guys want to go with, Wildheart and things like that. which, by the way, if you're looking for a cult, Wildheart at cult.com.
Great cult in the area.
Just email Cristina.
They do a lot of chanting in the
A lot of
streets.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, in the alley you go into.
A lot of
chanting there.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, it's red 40 free Kool-Aid. So
I have a kind of a deeper question for you too. So one thing I'm always wondering is like, I always wonder why. I guess it takes people from the outside or whatever to come in and start cleaning, and that kind of inspires everyone else to start cleaning. Like do you think it's just kind of like a general kind of lack of hope sometimes, and that's why a lot of trash ends up building up in the city and things like that? Because I always wonder why, someone sees one person doing it, oh, maybe I should actually start contributing. Like what do you think that is?
Well, it's like a really interesting problem in Harrisburg that's not like normal. So like when they went through their whole, Tannon could give you a whole history lesson, but
Sure.
Financial crisis, it just put the city in a really bad place, and some basic things got like cut back, outsourced, and one of those things was trash. And so in that gap of like just not in a good place, like that's when all the dumping began to happen. The prices of like just taking things to the dump like are really high, and they just like keep going up. So it's like both people from outside the city, it's people in the city that don't have the money resource to get it out, and it just became like this easy place to like dump trash. And then because all the departments were cut back, it became like just like they don't have the resource to actually deal with it, and so it just sat there for like, like a lot of the lots there, like, oh, it's been like this for 15 years. You talk to the
that's
community,
crazy to me.
And it becomes the norm.
Yeah,
No,
like
and
they
that's the
get
real
like
problem.
tired, like because we meet so many people and they're always like, I try to call the city, I try to do something, and like nothing happens. And after that happens for years, it like leaves them in this place of just like frustration and nobody cares. Like, and so then the people that actually did clean up and like cared began to be like, well, if I'm the only one that cares, like I don't care anymore.
Right.
So I'm
It's
just
like a
not gonna
hopeless
try.
problem.
For
Yeah.
Sure.
And so really like what we've done, which is like some people are like, oh, that's just so simple. Like, but the simplicity of it like really inspires the hope of like, hey, if we can like begin to like turn this around, and we see this every summer when we're out there going to a new area, they get hope, they get inspired, and they're like, okay, I want to keep this clean. And then it's like that hope can translate to their lives, right? Deeper issues that it's like, okay, maybe I'm not alone. Maybe like, if this can happen, and like there's these people that do care, like, what can happen in my own life. And sometimes I think it's just really unrealistic. Like when you think about some people that live in our community, their lives, single mother, just trying to make it with her kids, like working a couple jobs, like don't have the resource, like
the time,
or the
energy,
time, or
the bandwidth,
a lot of elderly, disabled people in our community.
Sure.
And they're like, well, why aren't they keeping it clean or doing their part? And it's like, well, when you're just trying to survive, like that's the last thing you're able to do. And that's the amazing part of our story is like we get to like bring in outside help, that it's like, okay, I can do something. And if that something looks like just like cleaning up and helping, give a helping hand, like, that's what we can do. Like we're available. And meanwhile, it's like, there's so many things I could say, but it's like when you've seen these dump sites that you're like, this is like what the third world, I've been to third world countries. I've been to people living in dump sites, and like, that's what some of these yards look like. I saw a girl, that's where she was playing. The stuff we deal with, like picking up used needles, all this stuff that like, how do kids have a chance when that's their backyard? That's where they live. So meanwhile, it's like, okay, like you can sit back and just be like, somebody should do something, or you could be like, hey, I can give a helping hand because this is what I can do. And that's the amazing thing that we've been able to do in bringing people from the outside to come in and just like, hey, I can give a helping hand, and that can like begin to inspire and turn around this community and ultimately make them feel like you're seen, you're valuable, and you're not just like another number on, stuck in this cycle. When people come to our community, like, it's so hard because it's like, do the people really want this cleaned up? Like, nobody wants to live in next to a dump site.
Of course.
In that community, in the condition. And there's such amazing people with amazing stories and hearts and really resilient people that you're like, I don't know how you're still here today, like with what's happened in your life. And so yeah, like it's something that we talk a lot about the hope and like what is happening, but the reality is like there are those stories of like, you know, talking to mothers that are like, thank you for cleaning this up. Now I don't have to worry about my child like stepping on a used needle, and they can like now go out and play safely.
I don't think that a lot of people understand that there can be conditions like that so close to home. Like I can't I can't even fathom the idea that, like, I have a 1-year-old. I can't even imagine the idea that he would be stepping around outside next to used like heroin needles.
It's 3 miles from your house.
Right. It's literally 3 miles away, and that kind of stuff I think it would blow people's minds, the cards that some other people are dealt.
Oh, for sure.
In their situation, especially so close to here. Like we, a lot of us have it so good we don't even know.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things. So you ever watch the show Hoarders?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Think about the depression those people go through. Mm-hmm. Like when it's all just closing in on them.
Yep.
And it's trash. They wake up and see it. It's the same thing with the dump site when you walk out your front door. So not only the mental state of some of the people that are living in the community is just going to get better, because when they look outside, it's nicer. Mm-hmm. And just to have that like simple, like walk outside, oh, it's nice out here today, as opposed to like just looking at trash and not knowing, like that is a huge help just for the mental health of people locally to the community too. Have you guys thought about it that way too?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we first got started, I laugh because I feel like we've learned more about the impact of our story when we study our own story, because we're not every single move we do is like some deeply strategic, like this is exactly why it should happen. It's just like, oh, it's filthy out here. Like let's go clean up.
Yeah.
Christina's mom, a doctor, I think about 2 or 3 years into our whole thing, started talking about, like, she's like, really what you guys are doing is you're addressing like a public health crisis. I mean, like,
absolutely.
Sanitation conditions and mental health conditions. And she's just like, have you not noticed like people are happier in the areas that you're cleaning things up? And we're like, yeah, like, and we're thinking like more simpleton, like, yeah, because it looks nice outside. She's like, no, because like you want to be outside. Like people are happier when they're outside. And like, you know, we saw that even during the pandemic when everyone's like locked in their houses.
Absolutely.
You know, like it became like a war against isolation, you know? And so then we started to see our own volunteers, like when in our area, you know, like when we shifted from red to yellow and then like just abandoned the whole model altogether. When we shifted from red to yellow, we had volunteers at the wazoo. Our organization exploded during that period of time because people wanted to help.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you see armies of volunteers coming into the neighborhood just looking to help. Our own neighbors were like, it was like same thing, just like washing over them. Like, oh, I'm not alone. So they could look out their windows and see that there's people still out here helping and serving and doing. And so I think there's just something to say about the power of volunteers and when it's really directed towards people and not like projects. So it's like, we're really here to help you, to see you, to serve you. And it just makes a massive difference in the overall impact of what it's like, you know, not just clean streets, but like now all of a sudden you enjoy life more.
Yeah. And the next question I was going to say is, how did the community help start up Colina and Love the Hill? But I mean, you said 11,000 volunteers. Do you guys know how many tons of trash you guys have done at all?
Yeah, it's like, I think it's like 2.8 or 2.9 at this point million pounds of trash.
Oh my gosh.
What?
2.8 million pounds of trash?
It's probably a little more over 3 now. Just
close to 3 million.
Into another year.
Covering 113 blocks.
Well, and that's probably not even counting the amount of people
gosh.
that you've inspired to pick up trash like on their own.
Yeah, so you think about 11,000 volunteers, how many people that you don't know about that just walked by and picked something up because they saw trash because of the community that they're in now, and they don't want it to be the way it was 5-6 years ago.
Oh yeah, like when we first started, one of my favorite stories, we first started, and there was like a group of people who were kind of making fun of our teams when we were cleaning. This is like a street right next to our house. And they were kind of like, oh, what's the point? It's going to go right back to the way it was. I mean, we went through, we totally transformed this strip. It wasn't just like clean. Like we mulched all the flower beds. We planted flowers.
Nice.
We like landscaped. I mean, like it was like immaculate, right? And in fact, it was funny. Like we put mulch down, and this neighbor comes out and he goes, what's that? And I was like, oh, it's like mulch. And he's just like, well, what do you do that for? And I'm like, well, it looks nice. It keeps weeds from growing. And he's like, man, starting to look like Camp Hill around here. It's like, it was like the funniest thing ever. But those same neighbors were like, making fun of us, and then we would like go around and do like maintenance runs and stuff just to check on everybody, and you'd see them like cussing people out if they threw like a Pepsi can on the ground. They're like, "What the are you doing? Don't you see? Like we already cleaned this area up." It's like just like totally different. Like people are like fighting for it. Like I don't want to go back to the way that it was.
Oh man,
it almost kind of that whole story almost kind of reminded me of like middle school or high school. Whenever like you get into like a sport or something, like you're never gonna be good like LeBron or whatever, and then you get a little bit better and you start making a couple jump shots in the game, like, oh, maybe I could, make a jump shot in the game. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Exactly.
That's so interesting to hear.
So, Colina, let's talk about this air roasted, delicious coffee. Like, and it's done. Actually, you guys have this done in the basement.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So, I always like had it in my heart to do something with coffee. Like I always wanted to like open kind of like a coffee shop or something like that. So just like kind of like a dream of mine. We met a friend of ours. He started this roasting business actually in South Dakota of all places. And he is like a Q grader, all into coffee, like basically started this whole air roasting company. And so the door kind of opened for us to do a branch of his company when he was involved in that. And so that's kind of how we started originally. 3 years ago, we rebranded to Colina.
The Hill.
So, which means the hill. You did your research.
I did. Spanish for the hill.
Yeah. And really, like, the heart of it was, like, good coffee that does good. Another way to, like, support what we do that just to bring in income and to really give back to the community. A huge part of it, too, is just like to develop that sense of like entrepreneurship within our community. It's something we want to see happen. We want to see like businesses pop up. We want to inspire others to do the same where like, hey, there's solutions that can like help fund these kind of initiatives like in other cities across the U.S. like that aren't only dependent on grants or private funding or raising money. And so I think like with the coffee company, it was really just like a win-win thing. Like we love coffee. It really like you pick up this bag, it tells the story like of what we do right on the bag. Like immediately when we rebranded, like we started seeing like just like almost overnight, like that first year we doubled in, we were probably like really small, barely making it. I don't even know how we still had the company. But
well, when you're telling people, I make coffee in the basement, it's not exactly the best sales pitch.
We make it in the cellar. Our basement, so it's not a creepy basement.
Or Colt makes it in the cellar.
So like fast forward.
Oh yeah,
now
that's the Kool-Aid guy, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Like we have it in a couple local coffee shops, like
Nor.
you know about Nor, and now Good Ground Coffee. They
that's
just
the new
opened.
And that's on South 17th,
17th
Street in Camp Hill Borough.
Yeah. And then we have one called Brew Box out in Millersburg.
Yeah, he said that too.
So like amazing that not only like it's just like a great outlet, but it tells our story. It gives back. It's like I think that again it goes back to like giving hope and inspiring other people to do the same. And also, like, we get to be a part of some really cool coffee shops and their missions. Like, Nor has an amazing vision. It's not just a regular coffee shop with what they're doing. Good Ground also is amazing in that sense. Like, they're employing women coming out of the sex industry, which really ties directly back, like, into the story of our community.
That was like a selling point for them was they're just like, well, we know that a lot of the women we work with are coming from your community. So how full circle of that moment.
And I'm actually going to go there today because I didn't.
Yeah, we should talk to them.
Yeah.
And
they're
really
incredible.
Amazing and
incredible people.
Do they affiliate with Project Greenlight too at all?
So they're with an organization called
Peace Promise.
Peace Promise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
similar type.
Similar, but like they're more kind of. I guess this is just my understanding. So
it's okay.
They're like kind of on the grassroots, like very relational. So they connect deeply with these women, and like their mission really is like we're finding them employment opportunities with like more wraparound services.
Good.
So
Yeah.
they get to be like employed through like so their coffee company is one outlet. They also have a soaps company. They actually make soaps. So they have like
Soaps by
employment
Survivors is the name
opportunities.
of it.
Oh,
And
really?
then
That's
they
cool.
do other stuff where it's like women will go through programs, so they get to learn other like life skills and really come alongside them to really learn things they couldn't learn because of what happened in their lives.
Right.
And so providing that opportunity really gives them a safe place to like grow and work skills and really get out of, the trauma and the things that they've dealt with in their own lives. And so just amazing people with an amazing vision.
Well, speaking of relationships too, I'd love to know you guys have been through a lot. You guys have had an amazing story to this point. I want to know, like, what does it feel like on kind of this side of it now that you've, dealt with the things you've dealt with? You've been through, years of your car getting broken into, not having the coffee company, and now you guys are here where you've accomplished all this stuff. Like, how do you guys talk about it, when you're staying up late and like, wow, like I can't believe you made it here?
Gosh, great question. I mean, I think that like for us, I think our war is always to like stay in a place of gratitude.
Amen.
And I think that the reason why it's a war is like when you are, and like we like live in an area of incredible need.
Yes.
And so it's hard to rest in that environment.
Sure.
And I think like gratitude is like a posture of rest. It's just this like, okay, I'm enough and the work that I'm doing is enough. And it's like, but like we're both, if you guys are familiar with Gallup Strength Finders, it's like a thing to identify your strengths. Both of us are number one as achiever. So we're also like, we're always trying to do more.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is why
we're all the same way in this room. So
which I think is why like it's hard for us to just like we try to intentionally reflect and just be grateful, like, man, because every day when we wake up, it's like there's 1,000 other things that we could be doing and could be doing better or could be doing more or could be doing with or whatever. And so just like kind of like staying rooted in that spot is important to us, but we're always dreaming. Like we are pie in the sky dreamers. We also, it's kind of funny, although we both like to get things done, we both like to do it very differently. I'm like let's get a big freaking team and just like rally the whole world. And she's just like, okay, but if you have a terrible plan, then what's the point? So she likes to put together incredible plans. And like together, I think that's what's made us a really incredible team.
Yeah, like a dream and a grounder.
Yeah,
She's
no,
like,
for
okay, good dream.
For sure.
My wife and I are the exact same way.
Let's
so
get the foundation going.
For sure. Yeah. And it's nice too, because like sometimes those strengths can be pitted against each other, where you have like, people who are typically more strategic. A lot of people point them out as like dream killers. Like, you're always shooting my ideas down. It's like, no. Like she's more of like, no, this is incredible vision. How do we make it happen?
Yeah. Sure.
And I think that when you like realize that you need both pieces, things just accelerate. I mean, because I like look at everything that we've done. I mean, like everything we just covered in the last like half hour, like that's all just happened since 2017. I mean, it's just insanity. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
and we didn't even hit on like we have an urban farm, and now we're getting actually into rebuilding housing.
It's 2 acres, right?
2-acre farm. Yep. And now we're building like our first development next year. It'll have 9 residences and 4 commercial spaces.
And where's this at?
Also in the Hill, 13th and Market.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you
Farms
tell
on
us
South
a little bit
18th
about
Street.
like how the farm started and all that stuff too?
Yeah, so I mean the farm. So when we did our first cleanup in 2017, I was reminded that at one point I saw on Facebook about how there was a farm inside of our community, and I was thinking like that's incredible. Again, me like connecting. Like I need to connect these people because some of my neighbors like need food. Like how do we connect them to this farm? So I show up at the property, and the whole thing is completely overgrown. It's like 6-foot weeds. Like
So it's not a real farm anymore.
Right. I'm like, oh, well, that's disappointing. But, here I have this newfound skill set of like, I can clean stuff up. I'm good at that. So I contacted the group who is, and supposed to be like running this farm and said like, hey, I would love to help you guys get this farm cleaned up and up and operating because like we need this in our community. And they're like, sure. So we got in there. We spent like 3 weeks with our team just killing it. I mean, cleaned up the whole farm. There was like a guy living in one of the greenhouses, like, like there was cars that had been like abandoned on the property. It was just a nightmare. So we cleaned the whole thing up. And then they started entertaining this idea of like handing the farm over to us and ended up writing a grant. They got the grant. And once they got the money, they just kind of kicked us out. They're like, we don't need you anymore. Like we got money. And it was just like so heartbreaking. But at the same time, I was just like, but that's okay. Like this is my personality. I'm just like, if it's not there, it's not there. Like, let's move on. I bounced back pretty quickly. So circle back. The school board went through like this really crazy transition. This is where the story gets really fun. But the property I learned is actually owned by the school district. The whole time I'd been talking to this other guy, I was just under the impression he was the owner because that's how he was talking to me about the whole thing. So some members of the school board approached us and they're like, hey, we heard that you guys have vision to like run this thing. Would you be interested? We're like, yeah. So we submitted a proposal to them, and the same day that they were going to vote to allow us to be able to operate the farm, they voted to go into state receivership because the school district was in failure. So all the board members had like no authority to do anything with us at that point.
Wow.
So then it was like another delayed process. Then finally the state, I submitted a proposal to the new leadership team. It's like, hey, this is what we want to do. And then we ended up finally getting on there last year.
Wow.
And so then it's just been this like crazy battle though, because same thing. It's like this property has been there since 1972 and nothing has happened with it. And when we got on, cleaned it up, started farming it, and made this whole place look immaculate, some members of the community were like, well, why didn't we get a chance to do that? And so it just like turned into this like big, probably one of the most intense like seasons of opposition we've ever had. Because up until this point, we're just picking up trash. It's hardly a threatening job, right?
Right.
But now you're operating a farm, like
a business, something
business.
with money involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And especially with going back to the irony of the whole cult thing, the point was to have students from the district come in. So some people are like, oh, they're going to brainwash these kids. And I'm like, really? We're still there? Like, come on. Have you not figured out like who we are by this point?
How many cult accusations do you guys get?
It's kind of crazy. So maybe I need to just move into like small row home. I think it's just the house that's the problem. But
that's what it is.
Well, I mean, you do have 18 bedrooms. Right?
Yeah, no. So I mean, anyways, just to tie that up, I mean, so we've now been operating that space, and it's really cool because it's like twofold vision. The back half of the farm is a commercial veggie operation, so we just grow and sell produce to the neighbors, and then the front half is all an educational space for students to come on, like do field trips, outdoor classrooms, and learn. Because inside Harrisburg, I mean, I think a lot of us just take it for granted. Like we know fruits and veggies. A lot of kids in our neighborhood, they know, Takis and Gatorade.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I do love Takis.
This is a problem. Like they don't know
Yeah.
food or where it comes from or even what it looks like.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been for us about like how do we help address the need there. And again, I like all of it is just like the neighbors are like, hey, this is what we need. I'm like, okay, I think we can do something about that.
Zach, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're doing enough and then do these podcasts and realize
and
then realize you're not even close?
I thought I was so
I was
cool.
like, oh yeah, dude, look what I did. Look what I did. I'm like, what? I haven't done nothing.
I went from nobody to realtor / podcaster, and then I talk to people like this, and I'm like, okay.
Now reality is like, yeah,
No, seriously,
I
you guys
wrote
are
questions down. Oh man, I'm good.
I mean, you guys are seriously doing like amazing stuff. Though, like that's so cool. Like I think like one of the best things I've learned from a lot of leaders who actually get stuff done is that you kind of a lot of the time you just have to ask. Like you just have to go there and be like, okay, what do we really need to do here? Mm-hmm. There was this I'll never forget this. There was this guy I worked at this giant corporate office in Carlisle for a little bit, and there was this manager who would only show up sometimes to kind of make stuff happen. And people be stuck on this like problem for like a month, right? Like something to do with planograms and all kinds of like nerdy stuff, right? And he'd walk in the room and be like, guys, what do we really got to do here? And like that would be the first conversation. And then people would start actually talking like, okay, this is the real problem. This is what I think. And like he'd squash the thing in like 20 minutes. It was pretty insane. But yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of. It's just like you kind of intervene and you're just like how do we really get something done? How do we really make something happen? So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about couple last things. Sure. We really do want to spread the word for Wildheart, Colina, and Love the Hill. So if you're looking for them on Facebook, it's at Wildheart Harrisburg. Instagram, it's actually the same at Wildheart Harrisburg. If you're trying to email or contact them to see if you can help volunteer, because they always need volunteers, it's contact@wildheartministries.net. And if you want to look them up online, it's www.lovethehillpa.com. And just to be a part of something, to be a small part of something this big is really important because it doesn't move forward without all the moving parts, obviously. And there was 11,000 volunteers. Over 3 million pounds of trash has been alleviated from the city. And you guys are what I love the most is you are spreading hope. Hope is contagious. It happens to one person, which gives it to another and another, and it just starts to spread. Yep. And it has spread 113 blocks, you said, in the city alone.
That's insane.
It's beautiful. And this is as cool as it gets. So, we love what you do. We love your mindset, your drive, and that's literally what attracted us to have you on the show. And thank you, Luke Hall, for the referral as well. But I think we kind of want to end with, if it's okay with you, just one piece of advice that maybe you guys got as a young person or going through this process that you could share with others to help them do something, even if it's a fraction of what you do. So anything you want to share?
Yeah, I would just say, like, the biggest thing that we've learned is, like, look for ways, like, look to be the solution. Like what you were saying is, like, there's needs around you in your community where you're currently placed. And, like, if you look to be the solution, not like, a lot of times we're really good at, like, pointing out problems and complaining about things. And normally those are actually probably keys to, like, what you're actually supposed to do, the things that bother you the most. Like, look to be an answer and to go low and to serve. Like, you're always going to eventually win favor if you're determined and you don't give up. And I think that's, like, the second key is, like, don't give up. Like, a lot of times things, like, end prematurely, I think, or don't reach their potential because we encounter obstacles or opposition, whether that's relationally or with, just things that will, like, can derail you if you let it. And the only way to push through that is to, like, be determined and say, like, okay, I'm not going to give up. Why? Because in the end, like, I see the vision, and people aren't always going to see your vision. So
Amen. Yeah.
You got to be the one, like, pioneering that way and showing them. And normally it's like, oh, now I can see what you guys started. But at the beginning, people didn't really always jump on. There were people that did see it, but then there were always the, so, like, the haters are always going to be. It's going to be like, there's going to be those people that they're not going to be won over until they see, like, okay, 5 years down the road, are you still doing this? Yep. And now that we're, like, we've been in the community, this will be, like, our 8th summer. It's now like, okay, like, I get why you guys did this. But as we're, like, doing these new ventures, it's still, like, that kind of same thing as, like, okay, now you got to, like, kind of do that whole, like, can you really, like, do this thing?
Right.
But in the end, if you stay the course, you don't give up, you win. Like, you just keep saying yes, you keep serving. Like, in the end, the fruit will come. Like, you got to just.
Yeah, we have a saying too, we use fail forward. So
fail forward.
Fail forward's been big. So
Absolutely.
We just want to thank both of you, and we are excited to spread the word about what you're doing for the community. I've had some thoughts on things that I want to help with during this process of this interview today. So we're really pumped that we had you, and we can't wait to spread your word. So this will air.
Thanks for the chance.
Yeah, absolutely, guys.
Yes,
if you want to make a impact in the local area, I'm sure you guys can always use volunteers, right?
All the time. Yeah. We'll never say no to
volunteers, donations, sponsorships, whatever you want.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. That was an awesome episode. So I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, guys.